In the cozy kitchen, Ba Tu, the mother of Tieu Tan, was busy preparing lunch for her son. Despite her age, she still clung to the habit of personally cooking the tastiest meals for him whenever she had the chance. The wrinkles on her face softened as she listened to the sizzle of food frying in the pan, a sense of peace spreading through her. In the living room, Tuan, the young CEO, sat on a luxurious wooden sofa, his hands swiftly flipping through documents on the coffee table. Today, he'd found a rare moment of free time to come home and have a meal with his mum. Lunch was soon served. Steaming dishes were neatly arranged on the table: sour snakehead fish soup, braised pork with eggs, and a plate of fragrant stir-fried veggies. Ly Tu gently set each bowl of rice down, calling out to her son. "Tuan, come eat, son. Put those papers aside for a bit." Tuan nodded, walking over to the dining table and pulling out a chair. He picked up his chopsticks, savoring each dish his mum had made, his eyes filled with satisfaction. "You still cook as good as ever, Mum," he said with a soft smile, his voice full of appreciation. Ba Tu gazed at her son, her heart swelling with indescribable joy. Though Tuan had grown up and become a successful man, to her, he'd always be the little boy she once knew. As the meal unfolded, the living room door suddenly swung open. A familiar figure stepped in. It was Hoai, Tuan's personal assistant. She wore an elegant dress, her lips lightly touched with lipstick, striking a polished yet gentle look. "Hello, Mum. Hello, boss," Hoai said, bowing slightly to Ba Tu and Tuan. Her eyes quickly scanned the dining table, lingering for a moment before she smiled. Ba Tu was a bit surprised by Hoai's arrival. "Whom? What brings you here at this hour?" Hoai stepped forward gracefully, her voice soft but carrying a hint of purpose. "I had something to report to Tuan, Mum, but I didn't expect to walk in on you cooking lunch." "How impressive! A big house like this and you still do it all yourself." Ba Tu smiled faintly, though her eyes flickered with a trace of scrutiny. She wasn't the type to be swayed by flattery. Tuan set his rice bowl down and glanced at Hoai. "If it's something urgent, wait till I'm done eating." Hoai's brow twitched slightly, but she quickly masked her irritation. She stole a glance at Ba Tu, her eyes brimming with intent. She wanted to make a good impression on Tuan's mother, but it seemed Ba Tu wasn't so easily won over. Sunlight streamed down the mountainside, where Tu Tien was diligently repairing the roof of her small hut. She tightened each rope, securing the bamboo poles to withstand the rainy, windy days ahead. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't pause. Long accustomed to fending for herself, she knew she alone could protect her own life. The rumble of an engine snapped Tien out of her thoughts. A white pickup truck pulled up on the narrow path leading to her hut. Tuan, the young CEO, stepped out, holding a large tarp in his hands. He approached, his voice warm and steady. "Miss Tu Tien, I brought you this tarp. The rainy season's coming, and a bamboo hut like this won't hold up well." Tu Tien looked up, momentarily stunned. She was used to solitude, to no one caring about her. She pressed her lips together and shook her head lightly. "Thanks, but I can manage on my own." Tuan set the tarp down, his gaze earnest. "I know you're strong, but there's nothing wrong with accepting help sometimes." Tu Tien studied him, her eyes wavering. She didn't want to owe anyone, but she couldn't deny she needed it. Finally, she gave a slight nod. Tuan smiled and joined her in stretching the tarp over the roof, tying down each corner. As they worked together, a sharp voice cut through the air. "You shameless woman, I knew it." Tu Tien's mother-in-law, accompanied by a neighbor, appeared. Her face was flushed with fury. She stormed over and grabbed Tu Tien's arm tightly. "Get back home now. How long are you going to keep humiliating me? You've barely been out here, and you're already cozying up to some man?" Tu Tien froze, trying to pull her arm free, but the grip was too strong. Tuan stepped forward immediately, positioning himself between them, his eyes cold and firm. "What are you doing? She's not at fault here, and you have no right to force her." The mother-in-law glared at Tuan, her voice dripping with venom. "Who's this guy? You think defending her means she'll run off with you?" Tu Tien clenched her fists, her eyes reddening but resolute, refusing to be dragged away. Tuan met the woman's gaze head-on, his tone unyielding. "If you keep harassing her, I'll report this to the authorities." The mother-in-law seethed, but she knew she couldn't push further. With a huff, she turned and stomped off, muttering under her breath. As her figure faded into the distance, Tu Tien sank down in front of her hut, tears falling silently. Tuan said nothing, simply standing quietly beside her, giving her space to calm down. A gentle breeze passed by, but inside Tu Tien the storm still raged. The mountain morning was crisp and fresh, with rays of sunlight slipping through the gaps in the leaves, casting a soft golden glow over the lush green vegetable patches. Tu Tien carried a bamboo basket, quietly stepping through rows of heavily laden squash vines. She knelt down, gently cutting each tender young squash and neatly arranging them in her basket. Sweat dotted her forehead, but she harvested each fruit with care, as if savoring the rewards of her hard work. Since being driven out of her husband's family home, she'd had no choice but to fend for herself. Life on the mountain was far tougher than anything she'd known before, but she pressed on, knowing she couldn't afford to give up. After filling her basket with squash and greens, Tu Tien made her way down a small slope toward a nearby stream. The water was crystal clear and cool, rippling gently over smooth pebbles. She sat down, meticulously washing each squash and bundle of vegetables, brushing away the clinging dirt. She looked up at the deep blue sky. Flocks of birds soared freely overhead, peaceful and unburdened. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the lingering heaviness in her heart. When she finished, Tu Tien hoisted the basket of squash and vegetables onto her shoulder and headed to the market. The bumpy dirt path made each step feel heavy, but her gaze remained steady. The market that day was bustling, with stalls stretching along both sides of the road. Laughter and haggling filled the air. Tu Tien found a small corner, spread a cloth on the ground, and neatly laid out her goods. "Fresh veggies here, just picked baby squash," she called out, forcing a cheerful tone despite the tangle of thoughts weighing on her mind. An elderly woman stopped by, picking up a bundle of greens and nodding approvingly. "These look really fresh. How much?" "Just 5,000 dong a bundle, ma'am," Tu Tien replied. The woman smiled, nodding as she bought 2 bundles. A few more customers stopped by, and little by little, Tien's basket began to empty. As she busied herself with sales, a group of women nearby started whispering. "Isn't that the daughter-in-law from Mrs. Lone's family?" "Yay, that's her. I heard she got kicked out of the house, and now she's scraping by at the market. She looks pitiful, but a woman chased out like that probably isn't much good anyway." Tu Tien overheard but kept her head down, silently tending to her stall. She'd grown used to such gossip. The sun climbed higher and the market grew even livelier. Though exhaustion crept in, seeing her basket gradually lighten brought Tu Tien a small sense of relief. While sitting at home, sipping water and chatting, Tuan suddenly remembered he needed to head to the market to buy a few things for his mum. Batu, his mother, asked to tag along. The highland market was buzzing with energy, the sound of haggling echoing all around. Tu Tien sat in her little corner, carefully arranging the bundles of fresh greens and glossy squash in front of her. She'd grown used to this rhythm, quiet, diligent, scraping by to support herself, one day at a time. As she focused on her sales, a familiar figure appeared. It was Tuan, the young CEO. Dressed in a white shirt and a hard hat, his eyes scanned the vibrant stalls before pausing at a nearby clothing booth. He browsed a few suits, nodded at one he liked, and then continued wandering through the market. At the same time, a middle-aged woman approached Tu Tien's vegetable stall. It was Tu, Twin's mother. She wore simple clothes, but her demeanor still carried an air of quiet elegance. Her kind eyes roamed over the fresh produce. "How much for a bundle of these greens?" Batu asked, picking up a vibrant bunch of water spinach. 5,000 dong each, ma'am," Tu Tien replied softly, unaware that this was Tuan's mother. Batu nodded, pulling out some cash to pay when a strong gust of wind blew through, sending a bill fluttering to the ground. Tu Tien quickly scooped it up and hurried after her. "Ma'am, you dropped this." Batu stopped, turning to look at her in surprise. Her expression softened, and a warm smile spread across her face. "Thank you, dear. You're an honest one." Just then, Tuan walked over. Seeing his mother standing at Tu Tien's stall caught him off guard for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "Buying veggies, Mom?" Tuan asked, stepping closer. Bata glanced at her son, then back at Tu Tien, as if piecing something together. "Is this the girl you were talking about?" she asked quietly, her tone carrying a hint of curiosity. Tu Tien froze, unsure how to react, but Tuan nodded. "Yes, she's the one I wanted to help." Tu fell silent for a moment, her thoughtful gaze resting on Tu Tien. A poor girl, yet honest and hard-working. That was her first impression of her. After a pause, she spoke gently. "Keep pushing forward, dear. Life isn't always so harsh." With that, she walked away, leaving Tu Tien standing there stunned. She didn't fully grasp why the woman had said that, but a strange feeling stirred in her chest, like someone, for once, genuinely cared about her. After dropping his mum off at home, Tuan quickly returned to work. Today, he and his assistant, Hoai, were at the construction site to check on the project's progress. Wearing a white hard hat, he strode through the sunlit site, listening to updates from the engineers. "How's the timeline looking?" Tuan asked, his tone sharp and direct. The site manager stepped forward, replying respectfully. "Everything's on track, but the foundation in the western section needs more time to reinforce. The soil's weaker than we anticipated." Tuan nodded, lost in thought as he reviewed the blueprints. Meanwhile, Huang stood nearby, her eyes glued to him. She was always looking for ways to catch his attention, but his focus remained squarely on the job. Just then, a young girl appeared. Lin, Tuan's little sister, ran up with a lunchbox in hand. "Big brother, I brought you lunch." Tuan looked at her in surprise, then chuckled as he took the box. "You're always so thoughtful." Lin grinned mischievously. "If no one else is going to take care of you, I've got to step up. Eat it. And don't overwork yourself." Tuan opened the lunchbox, his eyes warm with gratitude. Huang, standing off to the side, watched the exchange with a tight expression. She bit her lip, a flicker of jealousy crossing her face. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared on the road near the site. It was Tu Tien, carrying a basket of vegetables on her shoulder. Spotting her, Tuan immediately set the lunchbox down and hurried toward his truck. "Where are you going?" Lin asked, startled by her brother's sudden rush. Tuan didn't answer. He opened the truck door, grabbed a jacket, and made a beeline for Tu Tien. Huong watched, her gaze darkening. A wave of unease churned inside her. Why was Tuan so fixated on that girl? Tuan approached Tu Tien and gently offered her the jacket. "It's getting chilly these days. You should wear this." Tu Tien froze, staring at the jacket in his hand. She wasn't used to anyone looking out for her, especially not someone like Tuan. After a brief hesitation, she shook her head. "I don't need it. You should keep it." "Just take it," Tuan insisted gently, his eyes sincere. "Think of it as a small gesture from a friend." Tu Tien wavered, then finally accepted the jacket. From a distance, Huang observed the scene, her eyes icy with resentment. She clenched her fists, her lips curling slightly. Who was this girl, and why did Tuan care about her so much?
Chồng lớn tiếng đuổi cô ra khỏi nhà. Tự tin gần như quỵ xuống. Cô không biết mình đã làm gì sai ngoài việc sinh ra một trong một số phận bất hạnh. Ngày cô về nhà chồng, cô cũng từng e thẹn bước qua bậc cửa này mang theo bao ước mơ về một mái ấm. Nhưng hôm nay cũng chính bậc cửa đó cô phải rời đi trong tủi nhục, trong sự lạnh lùng của người chồng. Trong ánh mắt khinh bỉ của cả gia đình chồng, cô muốn phản kháng, muốn hỏi chiến rằng anh ta còn chút tình nghĩa nào dành cho cô không. Nhưng rồi cô nhận ra điều đó chẳng còn quan trọng nữa. Cô chỉ là một món đồ bị vứt đi, bị thay thế bởi một người khác. Tự Tiên bước ra khỏi căn nhà đã từng là tổ ấm của mình. Bước chân cô nặng nề như có ai đó trói chặt. Trời không mưa nhưng lòng cô bão tố. Những giọt nước mắt mặn chát lăn nhài trên má hòa vào nỗi đau đớn cùng của một người phụ nữ bị phản bội. Vô chẳng mang gì ngoài bộ quần áo cũ kỹ, trái tim vỡ nát. Bóng lưng cô nhỏ bé đơn độc giữa con đường làng quen thuộc, nhưng giờ đây lại xa lạ vô cùng. Cô không biết mình sẽ đi đâu, sẽ làm gì. Tất cả những gì cô từng có, từng gìn giữ suốt năm qua, giờ đây chẳng còn thuộc về cô nữa. Có lẽ điều đau đớn nhất không phải là bị đuổi khỏi nhà, mà nhận ra rằng mình chưa bao giờ